Welcome back to Power Profiles, where we like to take a deep dive into the lives of some of the world's most fascinating people. And today we are going to be tackling a figure whose journey is, I think, nothing short of cinematic.
Oh, yeah.
Narendra Modi.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that cinematic bit. I mean, just think about it, from selling tea as a child to leading the world's largest democracy.
Right.
It's really the stuff of epic tales.
It is. And that whole tea seller to PM story, I
Yeah.
mean, it's more than just like a feel-good, anecdote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a carefully cultivated narrative that he uses to connect with the masses, to position himself as someone who truly understands the everyday struggles of ordinary Indians.
Right.
It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, so even from his early days, there's this element of strategy,
Absolutely.
of understanding how to wield a narrative.
100%. And that understanding, it's been honed over decades, starting with his early involvement with the RSS, or Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. This is a Hindu nationalist organization, and it's where Modi really cut his teeth politically.
So the RSS was like his political training ground, shaping his worldview.
Yeah, precisely. It's where he developed his leadership skills, his emphasis on Hindu identity and cultural pride, ideas that continue to be central to his politics even today. And it's from that base that he rose through the ranks of the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, eventually becoming Chief Minister of Gujarat.
Okay, so the Gujarat years, that's where things start to get really interesting.
You could say that. It's where he really stepped onto the national stage, both for his economic policies and for the controversies that erupted during his tenure.
Right, so let's unpack that. We've all heard about the Gujarat model of development,
Right.
this idea of rapid economic growth under Modi's leadership.
And it's not just height. We're talking serious numbers here. Under Modi, Gujarat saw a significant increase in foreign investment, a boom in infrastructure projects, and this push for industrialization that really put the state on the map. He was championing initiatives like Make in India to boost domestic manufacturing years before it became a national slogan, and laying the groundwork for Digital India, trying to harness technology for growth.
So track record of tangible economic success. But then there's the shadow of the 2002 riots, a period of intense violence between Hindus and Muslims.
This is where the narrative gets complicated and where the criticisms of Modi really start to gain traction. You have to remember, these riots resulted in significant loss of life, and they remain a deeply sensitive and controversial issue even today.
And Modi himself was directly accused
Of failing to prevent the violence, of mishandling the situation, even of complicity in some cases. While he was legally cleared of any involvement, those accusations have never fully gone away, and they continue to shape how people view him, both in India and internationally.
So we have this fascinating juxtaposition. A leader who can point to clear economic achievements, but who's also haunted by these accusations stemming from a period of intense communal violence.
And it's this duality, this blend of progress and controversy that we're going to explore as we delve deeper into Narendra Modi's journey to becoming one of the most powerful and polarizing figures on the global stage.
Okay, hold on before we jump ahead.
Sure.
Tell me more about these riots, about the accusations leveled against Modi, because understanding that period seems crucial to grasping the complexities of his leadership.
You're right. It's a topic that deserves more than just a passing mention. What we need to understand is the context. Tensions between Hindu and Muslim communities in Gujarat had been simmering for years, and a horrific incident involving a train carrying Hindu pilgrims ignited a powder keg.
So the riots weren't just a spontaneous outburst.
Right.
There was a deeper history at play.
Exactly. The train burning was seen by many Hindus as a deliberate attack, and it triggered a wave of retaliatory violence that quickly spiraled out of control.
And Modi, as chief minister, was ultimately responsible for maintaining law and order.
Precisely, and his critics argue that he was slow to react, that he didn't do enough to stop the violence, and that his administration may have even turned a blind eye to some of the atrocities.
Wow, that's a serious accusation. But I remember reading that Modi was actually cleared of any wrongdoing by the courts.
That's true. Multiple investigations and legal challenges haven't found conclusive evidence to directly link him to the violence. However, the perception that he didn't do enough to protect Muslim citizens, that's a perception that persists to this day and has fueled a lot of the distrust and criticism directed at him.
So it sounds like a defining moment, one that cast a long shadow over his career.
Without a doubt. It's become a touchstone for both his supporters and detractors. His supporters see him as a strong leader who restored order amidst chaos, while his detractors see him as someone who failed to uphold the secular principles of Indian democracy.
Okay, so this brings us to 2014. when Modi wins a landslide victory and becomes prime minister. Was that a repudiation of those criticisms, a sign that the public had moved on?
It's more complicated than that. Remember, Modi's campaign was built on this promise of Din, good days ahead. He presented himself as a decisive leader, a man of action who could bring about economic prosperity and restore India's place on the world stage.
So a charismatic leader offering a vision of hope.
Exactly. And his communication skills, his ability to connect with voters on an emotional level, that played a huge role in his success. He presented a sharp contrast to the then-ruling Congress Party, which was seen as stagnant and out of touch.
And once in office, did he deliver on those promises?
Well, there's no denying that Modi's time as prime minister has been marked by bold policy initiatives, some of which have had a significant impact.
For example?
Take the Swachh Bharat mission, a nationwide campaign aimed at improving sanitation and hygiene. It led to a massive increase in toilet construction, particularly in rural areas.
So tangible progress on a critical issue.
Absolutely. Then there's the Ujjwala Yojana, which provided free LPG connections to millions of households, enabling them to switch from traditional, often harmful cooking methods.
Those sound like genuine achievements addressing basic needs and improving people's lives.
And on the economic front, he launched initiatives like Make in India, aimed at boosting domestic manufacturing, and Digital India, which focused on promoting technology and digital literacy. He's also overseen a massive expansion of infrastructure, with new highways, airports, and railway lines being built across the country.
So it sounds like there's been a lot of activity, a real push for progress on multiple fronts, but I know there's been criticism too, right?
Oh, definitely. No leader as ambitious and as polarizing as Modi escapes scrutiny, and in his case, the criticisms have been particularly sharp, often focusing on his handling of the economy and his approach to social and religious issues.
Okay, let's start with the economy. What were the main criticisms there?
Well, one of the most controversial moves was the 2016 demonetization policy, where high-value currency notes were abruptly taken out of circulation.
I remember that it caused a lot of chaos and disruption. What was Modi's thinking behind that?
The stated goals were to combat black money corruption and terrorism financing, but the execution was widely criticized.
In what way?
It led to massive cash shortages, long lines at banks, and a significant impact on small businesses and daily wage earners, many of whom rely on cash transactions.
So a bold move, but one that arguably caused more pain than gain.
And then there's the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, which hit India particularly hard.
That was a tough time for the whole world. What were the specific criticisms leveled at Modi's government?
Critics argued that the initial response was slow and inadequate, and that the government failed to anticipate the severity of the second wave, which led to a devastating shortage of oxygen and hospital beds.
So a sense that the government wasn't prepared for a crisis of that magnitude. And beyond those specific issues, there have been broader concerns about democratic backsliding and a crackdown on dissent under Modi's rule, right?
Yes, that's a major point of contention. Critics point to things like increasing restrictions on freedom of speech and the press, the targeting of journalists and activists critical of the government, and a growing climate of intolerance towards minority groups.
So on the one hand, you have these tangible achievements, infrastructure development, social welfare programs, and a focus on economic growth. But on the other hand, you have these serious concerns about the erosion of democratic norms and the suppression of dissent.
That's the paradox of Narendra Modi. He's a complex figure who defies easy categorization. He's undeniably driven progress in India, but he's also been accused of undermining the very institutions that make that progress possible. And understanding his legacy requires grappling with both sides of that coin.
It's a fascinating and challenging discussion, and I'm really glad we're having it. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on Modi's global image. How is he perceived on the international stage?
Well, Modi has certainly cultivated a strong image as a global leader. He's built relationships with world powers, positioned India as a key player in international affairs, and become a vocal advocate for issues like climate change and sustainable development.
But I imagine his domestic policies, particularly those related to religious freedom and minority rights, have attracted criticism abroad as well.
Absolutely. There are concerns about the rising tide of Hindu nationalism in India, the treatment of Muslims and other minority groups, and the shrinking space for dissent. These issues have led to criticism from international human rights groups and some Western governments.
So it seems that even on the global stage, Modi's legacy is marked by this same tension between progress and controversy.
Precisely, and it's a tension that's likely to continue as long as he remains in power.
It's fascinating how Modi's story really embodies this global push and pull, this tension between wanting economic growth and development while also upholding democratic values and human rights.
It's a tension that many emerging democracies are grappling with, and India, with its size and influence, is really at the forefront of that debate.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Narendra Modi, what's the one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to ponder?
I'd say it's the importance of nuanced thinking. Modi is a leader who defies easy labels, someone who's achieved remarkable things, but also sparked intense controversy.
He's not a hero or a villain,
Right,
but a complex figure operating in a complex world.
exactly. And understanding him, or any leader for that matter, requires looking beyond the headlines, digging deeper into the context, considering different perspectives, and acknowledging both the successes and the failures.
It's about recognizing that leadership, especially on a global scale, is rarely black and white.
And that engaging in these difficult conversations, even when they're uncomfortable, is crucial to making sense of the world around us.
Well said. This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. Thank you for guiding us through the intricacies of Modi's life and legacy.
It's been my pleasure. Always a fascinating journey with you.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Narendra Modi. If you enjoyed this episode, please kindly like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you